Hello and welcome to another edition of Football Express. I'm Stephen Looney and joining me in the studio today are Gerard Lyttle, Tim McCann, Mark McIntosh. You're all very welcome, gentlemen, as ever. Now, a quick recap of the opening weekend in the Sports Direct Premiership. On Friday night, it was Glentoran 0, Crusaders 1. On Saturday, Ballymena Utd 0, Linfield 2, Carrick Rangers 2, Glenavon 0, Dungannon Swifts 1, Coleraine 1. And on Sunday, Cliftonville beat Portadown 1-0 at Solitude. The reigning champions Larne, their game against Loughgall was postponed because of European adventures. Looking ahead to this weekend in the Sports Direct Premiership, Friday night, August 16th, Coleraine against Ballymena, an intriguing derby game up there. Saturday, Glenavon against Cliftonville, Linfield versus Dungannon Swifts, Loughgall against Carrick Rangers, Portadown v Glentoran, and finishing the weekend in fine style on Sunday, it's Crusaders against Larne. So, Gerard, I'll come to you first. We're off and running again. It's a new season. Larne won it last year. I feel that it's been a summer of a lot of turnover in certain clubs. Not necessarily, I don't think we've seen the stellar business we've seen in previous seasons. And we're going to look at the games in chronological order. So, starting with Coleraine against Ballymena on Friday night, Coleraine stuttered, got a draw at Dungannon Swifts last week. Ballymena beaten by Linfield. Two clubs with major turnover in personnel over the summer. How do you see it panning out, Gerard?
Yeah, again, some of them players have went the opposite way to Ballymena, which is a wee bit more interesting. One has went full time. Again, Tim will tell you at Glentoran, it takes time for that to actually bed in, gel in, and players obviously jumping from part-time mindsets to full-time mindset. It takes time, and also it takes time for the club, because there's a lot of things to look at. So that'll be an interesting one. In terms of Ballymena, I think I've signed really well. I've signed a lot of experience. Probably still in the market, I'm led to believe. I'm watching some of the interviews of Jim for a striker. I think we're all in the same boat when it comes to that. So it's going to be a really probably tight game in my opinion. Ballymena, by all accounts, on Saturday were decent. It's a tough first game, obviously going to Linfield, and obviously I think everyone expected maybe more from Coleraine when they went to Dungannon, but Dungannon gave them everything. So that'll be an interesting one, and one that'll be very, very hard to say where it'll go.
Thanks, Gerard. Tim, Gerard's right in what he says. I mean, he mentioned there was the turnover in staff. It was a trio of Coleraine players in at Ballymena: Josh Carson, Stevie O'Donnell and Aaron Jarvis. Ballymena, on the other hand, for me, the coup of the summer in signing Ben Kennedy from Crusaders, not on his own and being a good signing. Coleraine, I think, they're grappling with this full-time project. I think naturally it takes time to get the players that you want in. What happened with Larne, Glentoran, etc. I think it'll happen. I think it'll take another couple of transfer windows. But both teams will be wanting to lay down a marker on Friday night. It's a derby game, Tim. It's a huge game. Great expectations from both clubs. On the field of play, where do you think the battle's going to be won and lost?
Well, first of all, I think the fact that it's a home tie for Coleraine, the first home tie of the season, I think it's massive. Coleraine will have a big support. They'll get behind the club, and I think that's an advantage straight away. As Gerard said, and you said, Ballymena have signed really, really well, but it just depends how this gives their first, obviously 3 players playing against their old club is going to be vital, and I think that's a big test for them, and it's how they cope with it. If the 3 Ballymena players can cope with it, I think they'll be all right. But I genuinely believe, I think Coleraine just might edge it on the night, and I think they'll have maybe just a wee bit too much for Ballymena.
Thanks, Tim. Mark, it is very hard to read, not only at the start of the season, but because of the turnover that we've already discussed. Coleraine have made some good signings as well. Obviously, Dylan Boyle's a tidy signing. Kieran Hargan's great to see him go back to the club. They still have some major players there, such as Lyndon Kane and Jamie Glacken, etc. Dean Shields is now taking over as manager from Oran Kearney. It's an intriguing battle. I really don't think Coleraine are where they want to be just yet, and I don't know if that'll maybe go against them on Friday night.
Yeah, maybe. I would agree with Gerard. It's going to take time. It's a totally different landscape now, going full time. Get a lot of players in, some players who aren't used to the league as well. That takes a bit of time. Whereas, Ballymena have signed players who know the Irish League. I think that's a big thing for them. I think Coleraine will probably have a good season, but it's going to take time because Dean will want to do things his own way. he'll want to stamp his authority on it, and we all know the type of football he wants to play, and that doesn't happen overnight. I know Coleraine changed how they played even last year, but they're going to have to do it again. Being at home will certainly help them. You would imagine there will be a big crowd for the derby. But Ballymena are the team that I can't wait to see this year. They've signed some big names, big reputations, and the pressure Jim Irvin was under last year to keep them up was huge. Now it's a totally different type of pressure. They've thrown a lot of money at it. They've signed big names, big players, big experience. They'll be looking for top 6. They aren't looking just to stay in the league, and that's where the pressure comes, and it's totally different. And it's how they cope with that. I actually fancy Ballymena to get a result though. I think you could see on Saturday maybe it's going to take a little while to gel, of course it is. But the signing of the summer, without a doubt, as you said, it's Ben Kennedy, and if he turns it on, Ballymena can beat anybody.
Well, I just want to drill into that a little bit. Thanks for Mark for bringing up Ben Kennedy. Tell us, you're the journalist. Well, you're one of the journalists here, excuse me. But on the sidelines, looking on, what did you make of that signing? Declaration of intent from Ballymena?
Yeah, I think it is. And look, I don't think it's any secret that Ben spoke to several clubs. I actually think it suits Ben to go to Ballymena. He's the big fish in a small pond, and he has that sort of ego about him. It can be a good thing and a bad thing, but I think he'll enjoy being there. I think the quality they've added as well will help him. I think he'll get a licence to play the way he wants to play. And if he starts playing with a smile on his face, I think you could see really good things, because we saw flashes of it. Crusaders, and yes, he was hampered by injuries, of course, but you could see the quality he has. Everyone knows that. It's just trying to get it out of him on a regular basis. But they're going to have to do it, and with the likes of John Heron not being available for 10 games, you've got the experience of Danny Lafferty as well. That's going to be vital for them as well. They've lost quality, but to me, they've brought in better quality. And players I think you'll get more sort of performances out of consistently.
Thanks, Mark. Just on this topic, Tim, I want to ask both you and Gerard, who are working at the coalface, without getting into details, and I want to talk about the transfer window in general, because it seems to me that there's been a lot of, the activity's been really heavy in what would be termed last year as the bottom 6 clubs. There's a real push, upward push, of course. Portadown, Carrick, Ballymena, much stronger than they probably were. Yet at the top end, it seems to be being a bit more cautious. Would it be right in thinking that there's not as much money about, or well, maybe not ask you that because you're involved, but can we expect more transfer activity at the top end, do you think, before the window?
I wouldn't say lack of money. I think it's maybe clubs are reluctant now to pay huge transfer fees. When there's maybe players they can get from England who are out of contract, and you're only then maybe potentially paying a salary. I don't know, but that just seems to be the way that some of the top clubs are going. The ones that you say are spending the big money are the likes of Ballymena, who have obviously paid some money for players and have still got obviously money in for to try and sign Micheál Glynn from Larne, who's still there. So obviously that's still ongoing. So they've obviously got a bit of money and they're prepared to spend it. Whereas, as you rightly said, the top sort of so-called top clubs are a little bit reluctant. But maybe is it reluctant, or is it maybe picky and trying to pick the right player rather than just going after players who've been maybe released from other Irish League clubs and looking at other avenues? Has to be the right player, and there's still plenty of time. Another maybe 2.5 weeks before the transfer window shuts. So maybe other clubs have a few irons in the fire and just waiting to see what happens.
Thanks, Tim. Gerard, just want to ask you, were you surprised at Ben going to Ballymena number 1? And then also something that Tim mentions there, and it's something that you've done very well at Cliftonville. A lot of clubs are trying to, going outside the jurisdiction, be it to Scotland or the Republic of Ireland or England, maybe, bring it, or further afield, as is the case these days. I always think every transfer is a gamble, and I think that going outside the jurisdiction is an even bigger ask. You really do have to do your homework to get the right personality and right character, and as well as the right player.
I think you have to do that. I mean, personally, myself and I'm sure other managers the same. You have to do your homework regardless of if they're here on our doorstep or overseas. There's a lot of thought goes into signing a player, or should be anyway. I mean, first of all, he has to fit into how you want to play, and then obviously you look into deeper things in terms of the personalities and their behaviours on and off the pitch. So there's loads to contend with. I'm surprised that Ben went to Ballymena. We hear it every year. Ballymena are sleeping giants. They're a massive club. They can be a massive club. Their stadium alone, there's talk of them redeveloping or developing it even more. They've great sponsorship there, and McBurney's for years. So it's good to see that that's now being invested in their club, and the players that they've attracted. It can only be good for the league as well, but also for Ballymena United. So I'm not overly surprised. Jim's a fairly new manager, so he's off the back of playing too. So he probably has relationships with players, who's still playing and he's played with or played against. So there's a whole load of different things going on there. But in terms of them, I think our signings have been magnificent. As I said, I think the timing's crucial in every signing. And the timings have been good for Ballymena to go and pinch 3 players from Coleraine because of the full time model that they've possessed. So it's been good.
Thanks, Gerard. Just staying with you, then we're moving to Saturday's games and starting off with Glenavon against Cliftonville. I watched Glenavon against Carrick Rangers on Saturday afternoon. I was very impressed with Carrick Rangers. Glenavon were a bit lightweight. They were kept well at bay by a very strong and powerful Carrick Rangers side. Very technically capable club, Glenavon. Stevie McDonald there is getting his feet under the table. He pointed to the fact that he brought 5 players in last January and he brought 6 in this summer. So he says teething problems, they're going to get better. Cliftonville, if you'll indulge me, against Portadown, better team in my opinion. Scored 1, maybe didn't put the game to bed and endured a nervy last few minutes. But a lot to like about Cliftonville indeed. So Glenavon against Cliftonville, I sense this is a game of coaching and tactics, Gerard. Would that be fair?
At the end of the day, it's whoever puts the ball in the net, Stephen. You can coach all you want and you can go through drills and you can go through sessions, you can go through game plans, but listen, on a Saturday you pretty much hand over the players. Your work's done throughout the week. You look at the opposition, you analyse them, and you try and identify some weaknesses around that and obviously put a plan together. But at the end of the day, it's up to the players, and they turn up on a Saturday, and I thought on Sunday we were very good and probably surprised at that too because of what we've lost, especially top half of the pitch. We've counted 54 odd goals, which is crazy in any team. Plus the fact that Rory Hill was out too. He was another 10 to 12 goals. And then with Johnny Addis and Owen Casey, still here and was out. So, you can make excuses, but that's an opportunity, we always say, for others coming in to show and cement a place in the team. And again, I thought we were really good up until the last 5 minutes. But you could argue the last 5 minutes they were always going to come at us, because I didn't think it really overly threatened us in the other 80 odd minutes of the game. The positives for us is we've kept a clean sheet, we've endured that, we've stood up to it, and we've come off with 3 points and a good win. So Saturday's going to be another tough game. I think the league again is probably reset in many ways in terms of Carrick's, the Ballymenas at the top, probably the bottom half of last season have signed unbelievably well, and like we said just before the show, they've probably signed better than the top half. Are we finished? Are other clubs finished? I would say probably not. We're looking for the right fit for us, and I'm sure Stevie will be the same. So, we know they've pulled the pitch in and made it smaller for their style. So again, that's something that we'll probably have to look at in terms of how we play. But we'll be going there like we represent ourselves every Saturday to every opposition. We'll have to respect Glenavon, and we'll have watched obviously how they've done against Carrick, and we'll go there and hopefully have a bit of confidence about us and please God get 3 points.
Thanks, Gerard. Tim, for discussion purposes, Gerard's ready to lose the fact that we know Cliftonville won the cup last year, first time in 45 years, beat Linfield after extra time. Ronan Hale scored twice. He's away. Sam Ashford scored. He's away. And Ben Wilson is away as well. So we know that they've lost, as Gerard said, massive amount of goals. I'm going to put it to you, Mr. McCann. From what I saw on Sunday, just as a layman for discussion purposes, my view from what I saw would be get the ball into the box at Joe Gormley and he'll score goals.
Well, I mean, you could say that every season for the last maybe 10 years, that he's prolific. But the massive plus for me for Cliftonville is Ryan Curran coming back. If you look at probably before Ryan got injured, Ryan was probably the best player in the league. He was phenomenal and he would score goals for fun. And I think having him back kind of replaces what you've lost in maybe Ronan Hale and Sam Ashford, Ben Wilson, but you've still got Joe Gormley, you've still got Curran, you've obviously got Rory Hale to come back and and get your goals from midfield. So I think Cliftonville will be okay. Listen, Gerard said, all you want to do is get over the line your first game. You know, nothing will be set in concrete. Teams are getting used to each other. It's going to be, I think it's going to be the hardest league in years that it has been in the last number of years. Everybody is strengthened. Anyone can beat anyone if you're not on your game. And I think it's going to take, as I say, about 6 to 10 games for everybody to get, you'll see the patterns and for teams to just gel and get going. But you'd rather get that sooner rather than later. So whether you play well or you don't play well, the first couple of games for me is all about getting results and not to start the season off playing the type of football you want to play. Everybody wants that. And as Gerard said, you can give your teams the instructions, you can, you know, you've been back for 8 weeks and you've worked on everything, but once them players cross the white line, it's down to them. You know, opening day nerves, everything, you know, gelling, not knowing players, not knowing the runs they make, different things. So for me, the first number of games is just about trying to get points on the board. Thanks,
Tim. Mark, just on Glenavon, to be fair to them, Peter Campbell carried a bit of a menace after the break on Saturday at Taylor's Avenue. Glenavon, I think, will need more of that. They need, you know, Stephen McDonald said they need to do better. There's a sort of a bit of a concern and tension around Mourneview because, well, as we've been discussing earlier on, there's been so much movement from the bottom 6 that somebody's going to get squeezed. And my concern would be that Stevie's saying it's going to take us time to gel teething problems. My concern would be that by the time they get themselves, you're right, Tim, by the way, it'll take a few weeks for Everton to sort of settle down and find its own level, you know, that they might be playing catch up by that stage.
Yeah, I would have concerns for Glenavon. You're right about Peter Campbell, and I think any Glenavon fan would say they know what he can do, but he doesn't do it enough. And you're going to need your flair players to do a bit more. Defensively, I would worry about Glenavon. You know, even looking at Saturday's game at Carrick, like defensively, it was shocking. And that's why when Cliftonville go there, okay, Cliftonville maybe don't have the pace up front that they had last season. I don't think that'll be a major issue against Glenavon. And I think if any Cliftonville striker was watching Glenavon's defending last week, their eyes would have lit up. But I do have slight concerns for Glenavon. And yes, with the turnover of players, it takes time, as we've discussed. But we have to remember, Stephen McDonald's been in there the best part of a year. You know, so there's still a nucleus of players who know exactly what he wants now from them. It's time they started showing it. You know, they didn't show it last season. You know, they had the odd game, and at one stage, you know, they crept into the top 6, and people maybe got a wee bit ahead of themselves, and it was a really poor end of the season. I'm genuinely concerned for them this year because I think the other clubs, I would worry for Loughgall more, but when you look at the other clubs that you think Glenavon should be challenging on a regular basis, they've all improved a hell of a lot more.
So it would appear. Now I'm going to move on to, stay with you, Mark, Linfield against Dungannon Swifts. I don't know, you'll have a better feel for this than me maybe, but you know, I get the sense in South Belfast that Linfield are going into this season more in hope than expectation. You know, they haven't been really active, they haven't made a huge splash in the transfer market as yet, although they make a fair point, the insiders at Windsor by saying we've got players coming back, and I certainly think Stevie Fallon, Ewan East for sure, will be very important to Linfield's hopes for success this season if they can stay fit. So give us an assessment of where, I mean, obviously Dungannon Swifts as well. Rodney's, again, you look at, you know, the weekend and you can see another clutch of young players coming through, a bit of verve, bit of style, bit of flair as well, cracking goal. But, you know, Linfield against Dungannon, the match, and where are Linfield going into this new season trying to reel Larne in after winning the title the last 2 years? I
think any Linfield fan would say they still need more. You're right, Ewan East makes a massive difference. Very impressive first season. But Stevie Fallon, everyone in the league knows the quality Stevie Fallon has, but you can't hang your hat on him, unfortunately. You know, he keeps picking up injuries, and they're normally long-term injuries, and that's difficult. For me, you have to see Linfield play 2 up top. You know, I know David Healy's starting to play Fitzpatrick with Chris McKee, and I think you get the best out of both players playing that way. But I think Linfield will probably still want to do a bit of business, obviously bringing in Charlie Allen. You know, on paper that looks like a good signing, but who knows? You know, he hasn't played in the Irish League that much in his young career. He's been away at Leeds for a while now. That's going to be interesting. But, you know, for as poor as Linfield were at times last season, they still nearly won the league. You know, and it's hard to get away from that. And we all know how impressive Larne were. But Linfield just have something within them. You know, David Healy has that within him, you know, just that will to win. And you always think Linfield will find a way. But over the the course of a long season, I think Linfield need more. You know, if you look back on Saturday, you know, Kirk Miller was probably the standout performer. We all know what Kirk Miller does. I just don't think you can keep relying on the same people. And I would imagine the influence of Jamie Mulgrew probably won't be the same this year. He'll play a lot less games, I would imagine. And that would concern me also, because we all know Jamie's getting on a bit, but he was still a driving force for Linfield. You know, and to me that was probably the biggest concern at Linfield last season, that Jamie Mulgrew still had such an influence on performances, and it was a credit to him, but it shouldn't be like that. And you know, I think Linfield still have a lot more to do. Obviously Larne have lost Lee Bonus, but they'll replace Lee Bonus. You know, that will happen. You know, Larne will spend money, and generally, I've said it before in this show, until Linfield start trying, not necessarily to match Larne in terms of bringing in players like that, but until they start doing something like that, I think it's going to be a sticky wicket for them.
Thank you, Mark. Tim, Linfield against Dungannon. Do you expect the Blues to win at home against Dungannon, who again, no disservice, I think Linfield will win. That's no insult to Dungannon Swifts, who I think will. I'm going to watch them. I think they're going to battle very, very gamely, and I think they'll be very good to watch, and I think they'll do okay. But the Blues, they need a victory here if they want to, you know, rubber stamp their title potential credentials.
I think Dungannon will go there with no fear. They went there last year and beat Linfield, and you know, Rodney's got his team, as I say, playing without any fear. A lot of young kids, big open spaces. They've got pace to get in behind them. I think they'll cause Linfield problems on Saturday. I genuinely do. And as I said, they're very, very smart. But you know, when to bring younger kids in, very smart with some of the signings that they made. They play an attractive style of football, Dungannon, and as you just mentioned, with the flair that they have, it's whether they can keep Linfield out. You know, Linfield and Saturday, did they create much from open play? Probably not. They relied on basically 2 set pieces. I think it was a corner they won the penalty from, and obviously a free kick, that great delivery from Kirk Miller, who has this, but they can't keep relying on that. And if Dungannon can deal with their set pieces, then I think they have a chance.
Thanks, Tim. Mark said, Gerard, about Kirk Miller being a key man for Linfield. He was very, very impressive, and you know, behind the scenes at well, on the terraces as well, there's concern, there's anxiety about goals. You know, is Fitzy the man? Is Chris McKee gonna? You know, Robbie McDade's coming back from injury as well. But more so, I think Kirk Miller started off very well. I think they would like Joel Cooper to chip in with more goals and a bit more consistency, because on his day he's as good as Kirk Miller easily anyway. So Linfield and the game against Dungannon Swifts.
I think what Linfield do best, especially at Windsor, like Tim says there, with set plays, but they're very strong and they work an awful lot on set plays, and one, the delivery of Miller. You know, he's on the money. He's been doing it for years. His delivery's different class, you know, from open play and set plays. So that's a threat right away. And the longer teams are sort of in the game at Windsor as well. I think there's a nervousness sets amongst them, and there is something that'll happen with someone will make a mistake or they're on edge, and then Linfield just steamroll them, and that's been their mindset for a lot of years, you know. And you know, every season we hear Linfield's this and Linfield's that, but they're always there and thereabouts. You know, they have this ability of grinding results out, so-called grinding results out and winning games. But you know, they've been doing it for years, so it comes no surprise to every other team, every other manager in the league. I think on Saturday it's hard to predict. Obviously, Dungannon are a good team, but Linfield at home are strong. You know, they say they have that mentality, and I don't see it being not too much trouble, but it's probably unfair. But I think they'll win the game.
Thanks, Gerard. Couple of other games to wrap up on Saturday before we move to Sunday as well. Loughgall against Carrick Rangers, Portadown against Glentoran. Loughgall didn't play at the weekend. You know, we know how well they did last year. Interestingly, Dean Smith last year stuck with the squad and has done the same this year. Largely, a couple of tweaks, a couple of players in, a couple of players out. But he believes in this group that have stayed there. Carrick Rangers, I told you I was very impressed on Saturday. That'll be a fascinating game. And I want to also talk to you about Portadown in Mid-Ulster again. Portadown against Glentoran. When I see this fixture, it takes me back to the real classics. You know, and I immediately imagine, you know, Roy Coyle in one dugout and Ronnie McFall like a beast and the other, you know, growling at each other. And, you know, they didn't get on back then. I mean, the teams, the clubs necessarily, you know. I think Roy and Ronnie were all right most of the time. So that for me is it's a tasty encounter, Portadown, Glentoran, and it'll also be a great litmus test to see how far the two of them have progressed or what more they need to do, Gerard.
Tim will probably not like me saying this, but I think there's a wee bit of pressure on Glentoran for this game in terms of because they haven't won their first game. They're a new team in, a lot of new signings, new coaching staff. So they'll want to see a big reaction from the defeat against Crusaders. Did they deserve to lose against Crusaders? It probably didn't. You know, it was a tight enough game. It could have very easily been a draw. Portadown, on the other hand, you know, again have come up. Niall Curry, you know, will want to see. You know, I think he thought his team had done well against us, which is fair enough. But again, they've signed lots of players, and they'll want to get off. They don't want to be. They'll not want to be getting into the next 2-3 weeks with hard luck stories. You know, we've played well, but we lost the game. So that's an interesting game, I think, for the outsiders looking in. You know, certainly us to see how well we actually done against Portadown and to see, you know, where Glentoran are sitting at the minute and if they'll get a reaction from their players after losing. So that'll be an interesting view for certainly myself looking in.
Thanks, Gerard. Tim, Portadown, Glentoran, and I also want Loughgall against Carrick Rangers. Loughgall haven't played yet, but I want to see how they cope with Carrick Rangers, who, you know, they're a tough team to contend with. Glentoran, Portadown, work to be done for me for both clubs. The way I looked at the Glentoran Crusaders defeat, you know, the win for Crusaders, the way I looked at upon it was I thought there had been two changes at both clubs, and I got the impression that Crusaders had gelled quicker. Maybe because of European competition. Certainly a couple of aspects, you know, in defence that Glentoran need to work on. But Portadown, Glentoran brings you back as well, Tim, I'm sure.
Listen, I always used to love going to play at Shamrock Park. It was great, big crowds there. It was fantastic.
Did you ever get sent off?
Huh? Not at Portadown, no. Funny, I used to score quite regularly actually against Portadown. I was home or away, so it was just one of them clubs you always kind of did well against or score against. Irish Cup quarter-finals up there, different things, you know, riots, you know, just stuff that you enjoyed, you know.
Sure.
I can't wait to get up there and play. You know, Gerard will know that once you've had a defeat or maybe, you know, not the performance you were looking for, you can't wait for the next game, and we can't wait for the next game. You know, you want to get up there and listen. We know we didn't perform at our best against Crusaders on Friday night. We know that. We know there was an individual error or a couple of individual errors that led to the goal. I think, as Gerard said, it probably would have ended up a draw only for mistake. But listen, we made the mistake and we've got to deal with it, we've got to cope with it, we've got to move on. But, you know, the players know, and we fully trust the players. You know, since Daki and Paddy have come in, it's been fantastic. And if you ask any of the players, the professionalism at the club is second to none. How the club is being run now, you know, as I say, on the pitch and the field of play is brilliant. There's a really good atmosphere. And I can only put Friday night down to maybe nerves for a lot of with a young team this year. You know, obviously everybody knows that the amount of players that left. So, not pressing the panic button. Can't wait to get on the pitch on Saturday and have a, you know, go and play our stuff. Portadown's a big pitch, be a great atmosphere. And, you know, as I say, the last 10 minutes, as Gerard highlighted to, Portadown really had a go at Cliftonville and caused them problems, and I expect no different. You know, up at Portadown, I think they'll come out and they'll have a go. Niall's saying very, very well. They're a good side. It's Portadown's first home game in a couple of years in the Premier League, and, you know, it's going to be a great occasion, and I think it'll be helter-skelter for the first 15 minutes, but from our point of view, we'd like to hope that we come through it. And as I say, any kind of result from us at the minute, if we can get 3 points by hook or by crook, we'll take it. Just touching on the Carrick Loughgall game. Yeah, Carrick very, very impressive at the weekend. Stuart is saying very, very well. A couple of ex-Glentoran players in there as well. And I think they'll do very, very well this year. I think they really, really will push for top six, and I think they'll, you know, certainly push for obviously a playoff, definitely at least a playoff place in Europe. I think they've been fantastic, and on the Loughgall end, I think it's going to be, you know, they're probably itching to get going. They've seen the start of the season, and they've built it all up, and, you know, they've had to wait an extra week. So, you know, that could be a bit. It can work in both favours. It could work that, you know, they've had an extra rest and maybe able to work on the training ground a little bit more. But I think they'll be keen to get going, and I think it'll be helter-skelter up there as well. And I think a draw would probably be a likely result.
Thanks, Tim. The two games, Mark, I'm going to put it to you. Loughgall against Carrick, Portadown against Glentoran. Which way do you feel it? Who do you fancy and why?
The Loughgall Carrick game, I can't see anything other than a Carrick victory. I agree with everybody. You know, Stuart King's made some very good signings. A lot of experience, a lot of know-how and quality. Loughgall obviously have managed to keep Benji McGee, which is huge for them. You know, he maybe tailed off a bit towards the end of the season, but if they're to have any chance of staying up, I think he has to be important for them to score lots of goals. They brought in Nathan Gart's side, the likes of Conor McDermott, Conor McCluskey, all boys maybe with a point to prove, which could definitely work in their favour. But for as impressed as I was at Loughgall last season, I would just have concerns this year. You know, it's that first season, there's a bit of a bounce. Teams don't really know how to play against them. I think you saw towards the second half of the season, maybe teams had worked them out a little bit. So it's going to be interesting, but to me, I can't say anything other than a Carrick victory. In terms of Portadown Glentoran, I'm with you. I used to love that rivalry. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. The two teams probably have had the most turnover of players as well. You know, I think the amount of players that left Glentoran was too many. I think that's going to take a while. I wouldn't be too nervous of what I saw in their first game, because it was the first game. It was a comedy goal, and I don't think the game deserved a goal, to be totally honest. I thought it was an awful watch. But I wouldn't be too concerned if it was Glentoran right now. But we all know football throws up stupid stories. Wouldn't it just be like Shane McCartan to go and score the winner?
Thanks, Mark, and it takes us on to the last game of the weekend, Crusaders against Larne on Sunday at Seaview. You mentioned Crusaders, you know, wasn't a great game at all against Glentoran as well. Bear in mind the big change at Crusaders. Stephen Baxter's gone, Declan Cadell has come in, and I think we've seen with the likes of the signings like Harry Franklin, Harry Jewett-White, Kieran Offord and Jacob Blaney. The age profile is certainly lowered. It's a new era. I was kind of heartened by what I saw from Crusaders, clunky as it was at times, but there was a lot of sharpness, I thought, and a lot of scope for development. Larne, very strong. I mean, you know, they sort of, I think that's the key for the top six teams has been holding on to their talent rather than making big splashes, bringing it in. We know they've lost Lee Bonus. Be interesting to see how they cope with that. Do they make another move in the market for Benji McGee, David Fisher, whoever, maybe outside the jurisdiction? But on the field of play, do you see Crusaders putting a challenge up to Larne?
I think they will. I don't think there's any doubt about that. You know, yes, there's been a huge change of manager. Stephen was there for so long. But I think there's a realisation of Crusaders that there has to be a bit of patience. You know, the squad has changed, as you rightly say, the age demographic of the team has changed. I was really impressed with Offord, I have to say, though. You know, he was direct. I'd seen a few things in pre-season, maybe people were questioning him, but certainly I was impressed with how he started. And Larne, let's remember, they didn't start last season particularly great either. You know, they conceded a lot of goals against Dungannon, if you remember, very early in the season. And the loss of Bonus, yes, he's one of many quality players, but it's a big loss. You know, it's a lot of goals, and he gives them so much more. I think he helps Andy Ryan be the player he is as well. So that might take a little bit of time, but I'm in no doubt that they'll definitely bring somebody in before the window shuts. I don't think they'll go with what they have right now. I think they'll probably have to get rid of some players as well. But I think everyone will fancy Larne, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Crews got something.
Interesting, thanhanks, Mark. Tim, you know Larne very well. You know Crews, you know them all very well. You've been around the block that many times. It's an interesting one as well. I mean, you obviously have to fancy Larne as the reigning champions. Crusaders, some of the young players they brought on are very interesting. Like Kieran Offord was impressive last weekend, you know, because he's got his match sharpness up now. He wasn't that impressive. You could see he was trying in Europe and whatever else. Crusaders were very disappointed in Europe indeed. And the boy Harry Franklin up front, the tall, rangy striker. Now, he only arrived last week. What I saw was just the odd wee flash, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on him because I think that there might be a partnership brewing between Offord and Franklin. Tim?
Yeah, I was very impressed with Crusaders, and first of all, their actual work rate and how Mark talked about, you know, how quick they were. Just the fact of them pressing, putting teams under pressure. It was a very workmanlike performance, but take nothing away from the two front men, who I thought were exceptional and I thought were the difference. Franklin and Offord worked their absolute socks off, and you know, and that's what they'll do to, you know, the Larne back three. The same way Bonus and Ryan used to do with teams. I agree with you. I think Bonus is massive, a huge miss. people say there's no one-man teams, but when you're pressing from the front, which is Larne's game to put teams under pressure, bonus is the man, battering players out of the way to get space for Ryan and maybe Lusty and O'Neill and different ones like that. I think he's a huge miss. I think Thursday night's result against Balcony will depend on how Larne approach this game and their mentality and what they do. Because remember, there's only 3 days in between it, so they obviously play Thursday night and Sunday. So I think it's going to be a tough first game for Larne. Really, really tough. And you know what? Crusaders already got 3 points on the board. They're under no pressure whatsoever. They can go and just play their game, go and have a rattle of Larne, try and unsettle them. They certainly unsettled us. I think it's been a great start for Darren Goodell.
Thanks, Tim. Gerard, Tim's right. At the time of recording, we don't know how the second leg against Balcony will go. Larne obviously take a lead from over in Kosovo back to Enver Park. You know, but listen, I think we must sort of pay credit to Larne. Yes, the loss of Lee Bonus undoubtedly will affect any team. He's such a good striker. I think they do have plenty of firepower in the background, and I think they will go and get another striker at least. But this is a club that's geared for success. This is a club that's been built for success. They don't do a lot of shouting, ranting and raving, you know, publicly. And they have kept the core of the squad that's won them the last 2 titles.
I mean, for me, they're flying the flag, you know, for the league. You've had an unbelievable result last week. And Tim's right, I was going to touch on it. You know, Thursday evening's game could potentially, you know, it's hard to say. It's not even the management, it's the players. It's switching that mentality, you know, quickly. You know, from, you know, doing all your work in Europe, playing against a team, you know, probably working more out of shape than in shape, to jumping now back to a Crusaders team or a team in the Irish League that's completely different. Okay, they travelled last week, but all that comes into it. There's a lot of stuff comes into preparing for a completely different game. So it'll be interesting to see how the players cope with that and how they manage that. But you know, Larne have done everything right. You know, Larne throughout the years they've been brilliant in terms of, you know, what they've achieved, how they've put things in place, how they're continuing to do it, you know, year in year out. And I would say there's going to be no different in terms of their setup and their mentality this year and what they want and what they want to achieve. I know the big thing's Europe. It'd be great to see them winning on Thursday and getting that step closer to, you know, the European stages in terms of the group stages. How do I see the game going? It's going to be a tight game again. It's going to be really tight, going by what I've seen with Crusaders. I thought they were excellent under Goodell, and I was watching, you know, I always like to watch managers on the sideline, and I think Goodell, you know, I think a lot of people were expecting a Goodell of how he played. You know, he was in there, he was in the faces of people, he was, you know, he was a bit boisterous, but I thought he was very common on the sideline. And again, Tim may disagree, but only what I seen. I thought he conducted himself brilliant for a young manager, and I think they'll be again an opposition that's going to be up there in the Irish tail end of the season in the Irish League.
Thank you, Gerard, and that's it. Tim, Mark, the three of you, thank you very much for your company. That's it for this week. We hope to be bringing you lots more talk and discussion on the action in the weeks ahead, so thank you for joining us, and we'll see you the next time on Football Express.